Julie Johnson is the director of the Alachua County Animal Resources Department. She has devoted her life to animal welfare. Prior to coming to Alachua County, she was the executive director simultaneously of the Animal Care Center and the SPCA shelter, both in Bakersfield, California. Before that, she was executive director of the Healdsburg, California Animal Shelter. She has extensive experience and training in all aspects of animal welfare. Julie is a certified animal welfare administrator and a member of the National Association of Professional Women, the Society of Animal Welfare Administrators, and the State Humane Society of California. Welcome, Julie.
Thank you.
So I wanted to go back to a little over a year ago, I guess now, when you first arrived. And I hate to chuckle at your misfortune, but I think a couple days on the job, you heard that we were going to have a visitor to Alachua County.
Yes.
Can you tell me about your first few days?
Yes, I was able to come into Florida. I got here on a Wednesday and was told 2 days later that Hurricane Ian was indeed coming our way, and that we needed to set up 2 pet-friendly shelters immediately to prepare for people and pets that might be evacuating the hurricane.
So before you learned where the restrooms were, you
Correct.
were setting up emergency shelters
Absolutely.
For pets.
Absolutely. I didn't know the road names yet. I didn't know anything.
How was that experience?
It was exciting. It was terrifying at the same time because it was so quick. And, you know, because of my prior disaster work, I knew the urgency of ensuring that we got this up and running quickly so people and their pets could feel safe and they could feel supported through any disaster that might come their way. And so it was quite the welcome to Florida that, you know, really showed me everything in a very short amount of time.
I know in looking at your resume, coming from California, you had extensive experience in dealing with natural disasters.
Yes.
So, yeah, that served you well with that. Before we dig into the kind of details of our shelter
Sure.
and what's going on, can you talk a little bit about just national trends? I know sometimes people that don't really understand the challenges of shelters, they come at Alachua County without understanding that there's nothing going on in Alachua County that's not going on nationwide.
Right.
So talk a little bit about what's happening nationwide.
Sure. So we've really seen a difficult trend post-pandemic in that more animals are entering shelters each day, each year, to the point where 245,000 more animals were waiting in homes in December of last year.
Waiting in shelters?
Waiting in shelters for homes, more than we've seen. And it's an alarming trend. And you know, the concern is that in all shelters across the country, there is only so much capacity for care any shelter has. And so collectively, when you see those numbers, people always think, oh, well, you might have a kennel open here or you might have a kennel open there. It doesn't stay open for very long. It's very quick. Right. So it's really trying to manage to that trend and understanding that, you know, we could be in this for a little bit, and this is going to be a difficult road to travel.
You know, I want to remind people sometimes that the number of pets that need homes in Alachua County has nothing to do with the operations of the animal
Correct.
shelter. We are the place of last resort.
Right.
And the place where animals who have nowhere to go end up.
Right.
Can you drill down maybe a little bit into our local numbers?
Sure.
And I really want to, because in talking to you about this, I really want to highlight kind of the dramatic change in fiscal year 2022 and fiscal year 2023, but
Right.
share with us whatever data you think is interesting.
Sure. So one of the things that we noticed by running our numbers for the end of last year is that we actually took in 540 more animals over 2022.
Is that right?
And even though people were concerned that we were doing managed intake, we actually ended up taking in more animals. And that's a thing.
That's a lot. That's no small number. And I want to get into managed intake, but let's talk
Sure.
about some of the other statistics.
Right. Well, luckily, we also saw an uptick in our adoption numbers, which we are so grateful for, and couldn't do that without, you know, this community supporting us. But you know, just getting those numbers out and being able to raise our adoption numbers to almost 51% over the prior year of 39%, you know, that's a 12% increase.
Wow.
That's huge.
Particularly when you factor in the 500.
Exactly, additional animals that we took in. You know, and we had several cases last year that were very difficult that involved multiple animals. Some of those got adopted quicker because of the type of animal they were. But regardless, we really did work to get more animals off the streets in 2023 versus 2022. Right. And some of that even was reflected in our officer numbers. We basically doubled our numbers from 2022 for the number of calls for service in 2023.
And that's that whole other area that's under your responsibility.
Correct.
People think of animal resources and they naturally think of the shelter first and puppies and kittens. And,
right.
But you are also the director of the entire animal control
Correct.
operation.
Right, and so our officers are called out not just by citizens, but they're also called out to assist law enforcement on very difficult and challenging calls. And our officers respond 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And so we have to prioritize those calls as far as urgency goes. And so sometimes it might be longer for someone to get a response time depending on the level of urgency regarding that call. But to double that number and not double staff is huge.
Share those call volumes from 2022 to 2023?
Absolutely. So in 2022, we had a total of 5,187 calls for service. That's people just calling in. Right, it is a lot. And only one person answers the phone. So it is quite the call volume. Right. And so these are citizens requesting our assistance or law enforcement requesting our assistance to go out for whether that's an aggressive dog, a bite dog, a car, an animal in traffic, any of those types of scenarios, or just even stray dogs or stray cats or animals in danger in some way, shape, or form.
Witnessing animal cruelty.
Absolutely. Animal cruelty absolutely is a forefront, a big one for us. And so with that, we then look at 2023, and we were at 9,845 calls for service, almost double.
Hold on one second. You went from 5,000 something to 9,000 something in the course of a year.
In just 1 year.
Wow.
You know, and the good news on that, we were able to issue double the number of citations. It means we're citing people for cruelty. We are citing people for not taking care of their animals properly, because that is a piece of it. We try and educate as much as possible first, but when people just can't comply or won't comply, you know, citations are definitely helpful to try and enforce how important it is to us as a department that you're taking care of your animals in the correct way.
You know, Julie, in talking to you earlier, I mean, I always had a sense of how difficult that animal control job is because you're dealing with some, you know, truly horrific things in some cases. You know, it didn't even occur to me, though, that, and you let me know that if there's a suicide, if there's a murder, if there are pets in the house, it's not just law enforcement responding, it's animal control.
Absolutely.
So these folks have a, you know, a dramatic life in pursuing that profession. But are there any other statistics you want to share?
I think...
You know what I found interesting is you said there was a 50-something% adoption rate.
Right.
That doesn't mean we had 50% that didn't go home.
No.
So what all goes into the live release?
Right. So live release is a combination of animals that we get adopted, of course, but also animals that have been transferred out through our rescue partners, which are amazing. Our rescue partners, we couldn't do it without them. They're literally our, you know, our next up for us. Our fosters, people that show up just to foster animals for us, they're amazing too. They're getting these animals out and letting us know what their personality is like at a home and not in the shelter. And then also trying to get these animals returned in the field so they don't have to stay at the shelter. Maybe we do have some information on where their owner is and we're able to make that reunification. Gotcha. So all of those are important avenues to get our live release numbers to be higher.
And obviously, you know, there was a time when euthanasia was how shelters dealt with pets.
Right.
it's not completely gone.
No.
Because there are some circumstances that are just so
Yes.
egregious that that's
Right.
the only way. But what was our total live release percentage? in the last year?
94% in
94%.
2023. Yes.
That's
so,
amazing.
Yeah, so I'm very excited. And that truly is the work of this entire community, and our staff, our volunteers, and everyone, and of course our rescue partners coming together to try and help us make that happen.
Right.
Yeah.
You mentioned earlier managed intake.
Right.
And another thing I remember about your first few days on the job is you were dealing with an incredibly overcrowded shelter.
Yes.
And, you know, it was overcrowded because, frankly, there is a sympathy factor. The county does not want to say no
Right.
to a pet that needs to come into the shelter. But I remember you came here and discovered a staff that was stretched to the bone,
Right.
both physically and mentally.
Right.
Not to mention a very not sustainable physical kind of crates, and
Right.
just the situation that the animals were in
Right.
was not healthy.
No.
So you know, you took the bold step of instituting managed intake, and
Right.
there's some confusion about what it is and what
Sure.
it isn't. So give us a primer on managed intake.
You know, that was the wonderful thing, was luckily when I had come in, so much work had been done by so many people, you know, here, and some of the amazing vets at UF, and really helping us get that population down right before I landed, right before the hurricane, of course. But it really was saying that we can't ever go back to that, right? This is not humane. This is not a humane, unrestricted animal intake spreads disease. It takes morale out. There's just not enough physical help to be able to do that kind of work. And it's absolutely awful on the animals' mentality and their welfare as well. And so I really was strong in saying we are never doing this again. And what I meant by that was really managing what we take in has to match what we get out. It's never perfect math, and it doesn't always work each day, because you might have a case where you have 5 animals, but you only got 2 adopted, so you have to scramble.
Right.
But it's really trying to stay within your means of care and what is your capacity. If we have this many kennels, we have 100 beds, if you will, at our inn. We have 100 beds at our inn. Right. You can't shove more in with beds you don't have.
Is that dogs and cats?
Yes.
Okay.
Excuse me, the dog kennels are 105. Cat kennels, we have approximately 40 in our adoption,
Cats
kind
move
of
much
room.
quicker,
They
though,
do. Cats have been moving quicker, which is amazing, because I remember several years ago in the shelter where you couldn't move cats at all.
I went to the cat cam the other day, and there were no cats on.
There's
camera.
no cats on camera, right? Well, they've been turning over really quickly,
Nice.
Which is great, and that's huge. But it really is trying to stay within your means of what you have room for. And no different than if you went anywhere else. If you signed your child up for camp and there was 40 spots for camp, there's no more spots for camp.
Right.
If you go to a hospital room and that hospital is overcrowded and they have no more room and no more beds, they have to call other hospitals for help. It is the same thing.
Well, and it's not like you're relaxing.
No.
When you say we can't take in any more pets, you've got 140 pets there
Right.
at any given moment.
Right. And so it's always a moving, they're always moving parts and pieces, and that's what we're constantly having to look at.
Now, I was talking to you a little bit earlier about to what do you attribute this explosion in the numbers of pets? And there are so many factors. I mean, COVID,
Right.
economic factors. When
Right.
people are in economic distress, sometimes they have to make the difficult decision that they can no longer afford a pet.
Right.
As population travels to Gainesville, because we're a wonderful place to live,
Right.
Gainesville, Alachua County, more people, more pets. The homeless population can
Correct.
influence that, because pets are prevalent in
Right.
the homeless population. But something that you said to me once that stuck with me was, you can't adopt your way
Right.
out of overcrowding.
Right.
And what did you mean by that?
Because there's so many other factors involved, right? Because again, like you said, we're the last resort, and so we're just the recipients of what the community has grown to have, or what they have in their care. And, without knocking on every single door and doing a census, we have no idea, really what everyone has. And so adoption is just one very small piece. It's a large piece of what we do, but it's also how do we keep animals in these homes in the first place so they never come to us?
Right.
Are there services we can provide? Is there some other kind of help that we can provide so that they feel supported, they feel like there's a network of people that care about them, but they're not having to give up their pet?
Right.
We understand there are certainly crisis times that happen, and there is just no other way. We do get that. But trying to ensure people have the ability to keep their pets with them and keep them in their homes is the absolute utmost importance. Maybe they just need a board to fix a fence.
Right.
It's something so small, but that can keep that pet in the home so he's not roaming the neighborhood. It's these little things I always try and look for, and our officers try to look for, even in the community, to see if there's some other way we can help so that we're not just bringing another animal into the shelter.
One of the things that I've been really impressed with is the website kind of transformation since you've been here. And, when you say no in a managed intake situation, what I really admire is you don't just say no, goodbye.
Right.
You say no, here are some resources.
Right.
These are ways to maybe figure out how you can keep the pet,
Right.
or see if you can find a home for the
Right.
pet before you bring it in.
Right.
If it's a pet that someone's found that they want to bring to the shelter, there are resources for them
Absolutely.
to get the word out to
Yeah.
find the owner.
Yes.
So you're actually asking the community to be part of this process.
Absolutely. If you see a pet, post them right away.
Yeah.
We have so many great people that have been helping us. The Bark page has been dedicated to helping us. There's many other Facebook groups out there that have been so dedicated in helping reunite lost pets with each other. There's just so many to count anymore because they've all kind of exploded and taken on a life of their own. But those are really critical moments because you're in the moment right there. You have that pet on scene right there. The fastest way to get that pet home is right there. Not bring it to the shelter and then try and figure out how to get it back home.
Right.
But how do we do that right where we're at?
Yeah.
And so one of the things that we tried to do, our new licensing program, was to implement smart tags. And these tags have a QR code on them, and they still have an 800 number for people that don't, use smartphones or QR codes, and that's okay. But we're really been sending letters and trying to get people into our licensing program with these new licenses, because then they don't need a microchip scanner.
Right.
You can call that 800 number right on the spot and try and get that pet reunited immediately.
I'm so glad
on the spot.
I'm so glad you brought up the licensing, because I think when those letters first went out,
Yes.
we had a couple of people call us
Is
and
this
say,
real?
"Is this real?"
Yeah.
Because there are so many scams out there.
Sure.
But
Fair.
I'm glad to tell people those letters are real.
Yes.
If you get that from, what is the
Pet
company?
data.
Pet data.
Yes.
That's an easy way to get your license renewed, which is a requirement.
It is a requirement. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Dogs, cats, and ferrets.
Yeah.
So.
And ferrets.
And ferrets are required to be licensed.
I knew I was going to learn something.
I know,
new.
right? They can be a rabies vector, so
Oh.
it is critical, and that's what that ensures. Is that license ensures that your pet has a current rabies vaccine.
I see. Now, you mentioned the Bark organization.
Yes.
Journey Rebecca is a great volunteer who has this very robust Facebook post.
Huge.
She is constantly tagging Alachua County so
Right.
that I see these posts so that
Right.
we share them.
Right.
But she is one of just an army of people that are helpful. So can you touch on the volunteers? And another thing I've been so impressed with is the volunteer training programs and
Right.
the sign-up process. So
Right.
tell us about the just number of people that are
It's amazing.
critical to you.
This is really amazing. We have an incredible staff member, Sarah Gilly, who has really worked hard to reestablish our volunteer program and really help this explode. And so last year alone, we onboarded more than 350 volunteers,
Really?
which is huge.
Yeah.
That's just huge. We've got junior volunteer programs now. We've got programs where kids can read to pets. But this volunteer army that we have, which is so massive, these wonderful individuals make sure our pets are getting out of the shelter, getting new pictures, going for walks, going on different places and to events in Gainesville. They're just showing off our pets left and right all the time, and it's huge. That is something we absolutely don't have the manpower for.
Something that is incredible to me is the descriptions on social media when you're talking about dogs. You know, they go and they spend time with fosters, and they spend time with the volunteers at the shelter, and you actually tell people this one is good with other pets or not, good with children or not.
And we get that a lot of these volunteer interactions are what provides that information to us, because a dog in a kennel is never going to give you any good information, right? It's just sitting in a kennel. It's a stressful place. They're terrified. They don't know why they got there. But getting them out and into the community and on nature trails, and they go home with people and do sleepovers and all of that, gives us so much more information, because now we know how this animal actually reacts in a home. And so it really is our goal to try and give out as much information as possible so that families feel good about making the decision to adopt or foster. How
many people that foster pets end up adopting them?
A lot.
Maybe I shouldn't ask that.
A lot. Are you in the market? A lot of
I mean,
our
they obviously
fosters
love
do fail.
animals if they're doing what they're doing.
And then we have a really great group of volunteers too that truly stick with fostering, and that is all they do. They really take some of our tough cases, or our cases where the animal just needs a few days to de-stress and time out, and just takes them for a little bit and to see how they are, and just try and give them a break.
Another thing I hear you say fairly often is shelters are no longer dog pounds.
Yes.
When you think about the, how shelters were portrayed in the media and on television back 30, 40 years ago with the dog catcher with his nets. And but what do you mean when you say a shelter is no longer a dog pound?
Shelters are so much more now in communities than they ever were. They're a place of true compassion. They're modern, they're clean, they smell amazing. They house animals in a way that makes it the best environment for people and those animals to meet. They offer different services, day camps for kids, training programs for dogs. They make it a community shelter, and I think that's the difference. The dog pound used to be strictly enforcement based. It was 100% enforcement. We don't want to see you again after we take your dog.
Right.
Now it's come in, be part of us, be part of something bigger. And that's really what the shift has been, and help us save these pets, help us save more lives. It really is that shift of, we don't want you, we don't want to see you here, don't come to our shelter, to please come into our shelter. And that's a huge shift overall in thinking over the last 30 years.
This leads into what I was wanting to talk about next, which is the shelter we have has served us for decades. It was not built with kindness in mind.
No.
It was built to be a place to churn pets through, and euthanasia, mass euthanasia happened at that shelter. So you've been dealing with the, you've got a shelter that was transitioned into kind of a kinder philosophy.
Sure.
But the good news is our board has really made a commitment to build a new shelter. And talk about that a minute.
I couldn't be more excited. It's it's been a lot of collaboration even with our own county departments and our commissioners, of course, and the county manager really helping to push, and say we have to get a new shelter. It's time. Ours is 35 years old. It does not fit the needs of the community any longer. It does not serve the well-being of our pets or our people. And so we've really got to move into a different space that is going to provide a lot more services for this community, and a lot better environment for animals and people to come to.
Yeah, I know the board has we don't know exactly what it will cost yet, but I know they have devoted tens of millions of dollars to this. So that's great news. That
very encouraging.
This commission has decided this is a priority.
Yes, absolutely.
And I'm not going to ask you for any details yet, because I know there are several kind of sites being considered.
Yes, absolutely.
And there's a lot that goes into the thinking of it.
There really is, because you're really trying to design spaces for people and pets. It's no longer just about one or the other. It really is about both, and that organic and holistic approach to a community-based shelter.
Right.
And that looks very different than it used to look.
You know, I know we have a veterinarian on staff.
Yes.
Would you tell us who that is?
Dr. Stevenson. We are so grateful for her. She is an amazing shelter vet, many years of experience of shelter vet medicine. She's got a master's in forensics, which has been beyond, it has been so incredible for any of our cruelty cases that we've had to, go through. Without her expertise, we probably wouldn't have had a lot of these cases, but that's how dedicated she is to animal welfare. And she serves every animal that comes in. She looks at them, she wants to see them, she wants to know about them. And it really is a dedication unlike any other when you are a shelter veterinarian. And UF has a great shelter veterinarian program as well. Right. We have partnered with them. They have provided vets and students at times to learn about really getting involved in shelter medicine, because there's a critical shortage of veterinarians across the country. And I mean, it's very critical. And that's where these new things like telemedicine for veterinarians is going to be critical to provide more services and access to care for pets and people, just like human medicine doctors provide telemedicine now for humans.
I know we talked earlier about economics being one of the
Sure.
reasons people end up giving up their pets.
Yes.
And I know that there are some resources. There's the St. Francis Pet Care,
Absolutely.
UF, the Humane Society.
Correct.
So we encourage
OC
people,
Catnip. Yes.
we encourage people who just can't afford it to
Right.
explore some of those resources.
Right. And if you need a bag of food, call us. Don't turn in your pet. Call us. We will provide some pet food for you to try and get you by. We understand people fall on hard times, but call us.
I'm going to, we're almost out of time.
Great.
Because I know you and I know this story, I'm going to put you on the spot. I love origin stories of superheroes, and you have one of the most fascinating origin stories that help explain how you ended up devoting your life to animal rescue. So take us back to when you were 6 years old.
6 years old. We lived in Laguna Hills, California, which is in Southern Cal, and our neighbor's house caught on fire. And unfortunately, it was going through the house very quickly, and they had dogs, cats, and ducks that they kept as pets at the time. And I, for whatever reason, me and my little 6-year-old brain didn't even think about it, but I ran up to go grab the animals while my family helped get the people out. And so we had ducks in our bathtub for a couple nights while the family got straightened out. We had a couple extra dogs and cats that stayed with us because I was adamant that we were going to save these animals. And it just really took off from there. I was babying the ducks. I remember this vividly, that I was babying the ducks in the bathtub, which, looking back, it's like, who puts ducks in their bathtub in their home? But, luckily my parents went along with it. Yeah. Luckily they agreed.
Well, thank you so much for visiting with me today.
Absolutely.
And your story is incredible, and the work you're doing is incredible. Thank you.
Thank you so much.